Lucy sat at the table, stacking banana slices in uneven towers. Dina poured her a glass of milk, the decision she'd been turning over for months. Finally settled in her mind. Fashion design had been her world, but the pull of being present for her daughter was stronger. Barry came in, messy hair, sat next to Lucy. He paused, studying Dina.
Are you sure about this?
Work will wait. She won't be little forever.
He accepted it with a small nod. His job in logistics would keep them afloat. They didn't live extravagantly, but they had enough. After Barry left for work, Dina cleared the breakfast dishes and took a look at her design sketches before putting them into a drawer. She imagined days with Lucy, playing together, teaching Lucy to draw. Small, ordinary moments she didn't want to miss. That night, when Barry returned smelling faintly of rain, she greeted him with a smile. The choice was made. She would stay home. Days passed. Dina happily spent her days taking care of Lucy. It began with headlines that seemed far away and illness spreading in places they had never been. Then came the first local case, then another. Within weeks, schools closed, offices emptied, and the city's streets fell silent. Barry set up his laptop on the dining table, turning one corner of the home into his office. Dina adjusted quickly to the new rhythm. Mornings were for baking, afternoons for games. Barry joined them in the evenings, and for a while, the world outside felt distant and unreal. In those first months, there was a strange sweetness to the confinement. No rushing to catch trains, no late meetings, no crowded schedules. The days blurred. Barry no longer wore his watch. They forgot what day it was. They watched the news together, the rising numbers scrolling across the bottom of the screen. The lockdown was extended once, then again. Barry was home for dinner every night. They built blanket forts in the living room, stayed up late watching old films, and laughed more than they had in years. But outside, the world was changing faster than they realized. The email arrived just after lunch. Barry was still at the dining table with his laptop open when the notification popped up. He clicked it without thinking, expecting another update on remote work procedures. Dina saw his expression change, the way his shoulders tensed, his eyes fixed on the screen longer than usual.
They've let me go. Budget cuts. Effective immediately.
The words settled heavily between them. Barry read the email again, but it didn't change. The stability they'd relied on had vanished in a few lines of text. "We'll manage," Dina said, though she could feel the first stirrings of fear. "We just have to start looking." Days turned into weeks filled with unanswered applications and polite rejection emails. Barry became quieter, the weight of uncertainty pressing down on him. Soon, Dina and Barry had to dip into their savings to fulfill basic necessities. Dina began applying too, telling herself it was temporary, just until he found something. But deep down, she knew their life had already shifted into something unfamiliar. That evening, after Lucy went to bed, they sat side by side with their laptops, searching job boards. But company after company had frozen hiring. Many were making losses, shutting down, or laying off their own staff. The roles they found were rare, fiercely competitive, and gone within days. It was an email that broke the string of rejections. A small fashion company was looking for someone to join their design team immediately. The interview was quick, done over video call. The role required working from the office, unusual in the middle of lockdown, but Dina didn't hesitate. 2 days later, she was walking through the glass doors of her new workplace, masked, temperature checked, and armed with the kind of nervous energy she hadn't felt in months. Her manager, Caleb, met her in the reception area. Tall, neatly dressed, with a voice that carried warmth. He had the kind of easy charm that put people at ease. He welcomed her with a smile that crinkled at the corners of his eyes. Later that day, she was in the restroom when she overheard a few colleagues gossiping. Someone mentioned that Caleb's wife had been unwell, and he brought fresh flowers for her every morning. The women adored the sweet gesture. The work was demanding. Orders were behind schedule, suppliers were unreliable, and every day seemed to bring a new problem to solve. But the pace felt good to Dina. It was a distraction from the uncertainty at home. At night, she returned to Barry and Lucy, sometimes later than she planned. Barry would ask about her day. But each night Dina returned late. His questions felt heavier, as though he was listening for something beneath her answers. She told herself it was just the stress of unemployment. She didn't yet see the doubt taking root. The first few weeks of Dina's new job passed in a blur. She left early, came home late, and tried to stretch the hours at home. To cover everything Lucy needed, Barry took on more of the childcare without complaint, but there was a change in the air between them. He had always been talkative in the evenings, eager to share details about his day. Now, when she walked in, she often found him silent, watching television or scrolling through job postings on his phone. Caleb and Dina frequently found themselves working late into the night as deadlines piled up. In the rhythm of long hours and mounting pressure, a friendship took root, a result of time spent together, navigating the demands of work together. Caleb began to drop Dina home when they worked late. It was practical. Buses were running infrequently, and the streets were quieter than usual. But Barry noticed. On the nights she arrived in Caleb's car, Barry's questions came sharper.
Another late night.
He'd ask, eyes lingering too long. She explained about delayed orders, supplier calls, or emergency meetings, but her words seemed to slide past him. Barry's days blurred into a cycle of restless searching. Applications sent, interviews endured, each rejection weighing heavier than the last. Between the endless hunt for work, he kept the house in order, cooking meals, scrubbing floors, and caring for little Lucy, while Dina disappeared into the demands of her job. Night after night, the clock ticked past Lucy's bedtime before Dina returned. And even then, instead of resting, she vanished into the study, her light burning long after the rest of the house had gone quiet. It was only recently that Barry began to notice the pattern. A tall, well-dressed man, handsome and confident, pulling up in a sleek, expensive car to drop Dina home. Each sighting struck him like a blow. His heart sank, and suspicion began to coil around him, sharp and unrelenting. The bitterness crept in slowly, turning his thoughts against Dina, sowing distance between them, and leaving him haunted by doubts he could not silence. One night, Barry saw Dina getting down from Caleb's car. Barry lost cool. He burst out, shaking in anger.
You are late again tonight. Does your Caleb know you have a family here? Or does he think you're free every evening?
The name hit like a stone. Caleb. It became the centerpiece of their arguments. Barry would press how much time she spent with him, whether he always offered to drive her home, what they talked about. One evening, Dina mentioned how Caleb bought fresh ones for Merida every morning. Barry gave a small, dismissive laugh, but said nothing more. Later, she found him standing at the sink, staring out the window, lost in thought. That night, after she'd gone to bed, Barry snuck her cell phone and unlocked it. He scrolled through her messages, call logs, even work emails. The next morning, he acted as if nothing had happened, but there was a new sharpness in his questions. It didn't stop there. In her absence, he rifled through her purse under the pretense of looking for Lucy's crayons. The arguments grew louder, angrier. Dina accused him of mistrust. Barry accused her of betrayal. The word Caleb was no longer just a name. It was a weapon they hurled at each other in every fight. At night, lying awake beside him, Dina felt the weight of his suspicion pressing in like a wall she could no longer see over. By the third month at the new job, the arguments at home had drained Dina more than the long hours at work. One particularly hard day, a shipment delay had forced her to stay back until everyone else left the office. Caleb was still at his desk, typing quickly. He noticed Dina, walked up to her and said,
You look like you've been carrying the weight of the whole city.
She meant to brush it off, but the words spilled out before she could stop them. The fights, the accusations, Barry's constant suspicion. She didn't mention the phone checking or the purse, but she didn't have to. The exhaustion in her voice said enough. Caleb listened without interrupting. When she finally stopped, he leaned back in his chair.
Marriage under this kind of pressure, it's not easy.
Then he told her about Merida, how they'd been married for years, but could never have children, how the fertility treatments had been painful and costly, and how the strain had grown between them.
I try to make her smile.
It was the first time Dina had seen something guarded in his expression, a weariness that seemed deeper than long hours at work. For a moment, she felt they understood each other in a way that went beyond their roles in the office. When he offered her a ride home that night, she accepted without hesitation. Revealing their deepest wounds to one another brought them closer. Barry's insecurity and mistrust hollowed their bond. They lived together yet felt worlds apart. Lucy began to pull away from Dina and relied on Barry for everything. Dina had begun to notice the quiet comfort in Caleb's presence. What started as simple camaraderie at work slowly deepened. Shared jokes, long conversations, the kind of ease that made the long hours feel lighter. In those moments, she felt something stir inside her, a spark she had only felt with Barry before. That spark unsettled her. Each time Caleb's smile lingered, each time he held her hands, the thought pressed in. Was this more than friendship? Was she betraying Barry in ways that couldn't be undone? Each time the guilt threatened to consume her, she brushed it away, thinking of Caleb's loyalty towards his wife, Merida. It was a Friday evening when Caleb approached her desk, coat slung over his arm. He asked,
Got a minute? I need an honest eye for something.
She assumed it was work-related, but instead, he led her out of the building and toward a jeweler's store a few blocks away. Caleb explained it was their wedding anniversary, and he wanted to surprise Merida, something special to lift her spirits during her sickness. Dina hesitated at first, unsure why he needed her opinion, but he insisted she had an instinct for beauty. Caleb asking which design seemed more thoughtful, which stones felt warmer. She gave her suggestions. After the purchase, he suggested dinner as a thank you, and though she thought about declining, the thought of returning to the tension at home made her agree. The restaurant was nearly empty, the muffled clink of cutlery filling the space between their light conversation. It felt easy, almost normal, a rare break from the heaviness that had followed her for weeks. But that ease vanished the moment she reached her building. At the entrance, her clothes were tucked in a suitcase near the door. A box held her shoes, another her cosmetics. The door was locked from the inside. She knocked, then pounded, calling Barry's name. No answer. A light in the hallway upstairs flickered, but no one came. Her phone felt heavy in her hand as she scrolled to Caleb's number. The moment he answered, her voice broke. I can't stay here tonight. Within minutes, his car was outside. She climbed in, still clutching the handle of her suitcase, and they drove away in silence. Caleb didn't ask many questions as he drove, just glanced at her now and then. His calmness was a strange contrast to the turmoil churning in her chest. He booked her into a modest hotel on the quieter side of the city. The lobby smelled faintly of disinfectant, a reminder of the invisible threat, lingering everywhere. Once inside the room, Dina set her suitcase by the wall and sat heavily on the bed, anxious. Caleb poured her a glass of water from the complimentary bottle.
You need to rest. Everything feels worse when you're exhausted.
She nodded, but her mind kept looping through the image of her belongings piled outside her own front door. Her marriage, already cracked, suddenly felt as if it had shattered. Caleb sat beside, watching her. Then he began slowly.
You know, some people aren't worth the pain they cause. You work hard. You're loyal. But if someone doesn't see that, maybe they don't deserve you.
She stayed silent, unsure where he was heading.
There's a way to end the suffering. Quick. Clean. In times like these, no one asks too many questions. Everyone's blaming the virus.
Then he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small glass vial filled with a liquid. He held it between his fingers, as if it were something precious. Her eyes darted to the vial, then back to his face. He went on, voice low but steady.
I've been doing it for weeks now. Merida has been sick, yes, but not from what she thinks. It's sprayed onto the flowers I bring her. Invisible, odorless. Every breath she takes draws it deeper into her lungs. The symptoms? Well, they mimic what's killing half the world right now. The doctors won't think twice.
Dina's head snapped up, shock mixing with disbelief. You've been poisoning her?
She's fading already. Dina, think about it. You and me, no more lies, no more fights. We'd make a perfect couple. We understand each other in ways they never could. Imagine building something together, without the dead weight holding us back.
She recoiled slightly, but he leaned closer to touch her face. He set the vial down gently on the nightstand, as though presenting her with a priceless gift. Then he excused himself to the bathroom, humming under his breath. Her heart pounded. She slipped her phone into her lap, dialing 911 with shaking hands. Whispering her location, she told the dispatcher there was a man in her room carrying poison and that his wife was already sick from it. Caleb emerged from the bathroom, a faint trace of steam still clinging to him. He picked up the vial and asked,
Have you decided?
Before Dina could answer, a pounding knock shook the door. Caleb froze. His eyes darted to her, suspicion flaring.
What's going on? I thought you loved me. You said you were tired of your husband.
She didn't move. The knocking grew louder. When Caleb hesitated, the door burst open. 2 officers entered, weapons drawn. Caleb's composure shattered, but his gaze remained locked on Dina with a mixture of betrayal and fury. One officer took the vial from his hand and held it up, asking,
What's this?
Caleb said nothing. Dina stepped forward, her voice unsteady but clear. That's poison. He has been poisoning his wife through flowers sprayed with this inhalant. The officers exchanged a glance before cuffing Caleb.
You're under arrest. You have the right to remain silent. Everything you.
The words faded behind the pounding in Dina's ears. Hours later, in the quiet of the night, she sat in a police van.
We sent officers to check on Merida. She's in the hospital now. The tox screen already shows traces of poison in her bloodstream. You probably saved her life.
When Dina finally stepped out of the police van, Barry was waiting near the entrance. He looked exhausted, his clothes rumpled. The police officer explained the events of earlier night to Barry and left. They stood a few feet apart, neither moving at first. Then Barry exhaled heavily and closed the distance. Barry started speaking slowly.
I'm sorry for not trusting you, for letting my fear destroy us.
Tears burned Dina's eyes.
I'm sorry too. I should have seen how much you were hurting. I confided in the wrong person.
They didn't speak further. The embrace said enough. In the weeks that followed, Barry found part-time work while continuing to search for something permanent. They began speaking openly again, learning to mend the cracks that had formed. The shadow of Caleb's betrayal lingered, but it no longer defined them. The world outside was still gripped by uncertainty, but inside their small home, there was a fragile, stubborn hope, the kind that refuses to die, even in the darkest of times.
Hope you enjoyed this video. For more such stories, subscribe to my channel and click the bell icon, because I serve the best tea. See you next time.